Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty unique. We're going to be taking a closer look at Freedom International Schools Africa, or FISA.
Oh yeah, FISA, they're doing some really interesting things over there.
Yeah, and I think what really caught my eye is how they're combining this world-class international baccalaureate program, the IB, but they're also weaving in a really strong focus on Afrocentric values. It's a fascinating blend, right?
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, you don't see that very often.
No, not at all. And so we're going to unpack that a little bit today. What does that actually look like in practice? How does that impact the student experience? But before we get too deep into that, for those who maybe aren't as familiar, can you give us just a quick rundown of what the IB program is and what makes it so, sought after globally?
Sure. So the International Baccalaureate, it's you can think of it as like a globally recognized, really rigorous program. It's known for, really developing those critical thinking skills.
Problem solving.
Problem solving, yeah. And it really emphasizes a global outlook, which is, I think in today's world, that's essential.
Absolutely. And I think, for parents who are maybe considering different educational options for their kids, the IB diploma, it opens doors, right? I mean, we're talking about top universities worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely a passport to higher education, you could say.
Yeah. And you mentioned, critical thinking, problem solving. I mean, those are the skills, honestly, that are going to be so valuable no matter what field these kids end up going into.
Right. Exactly. Because the world's changing so fast. It's not just about memorizing facts anymore, right? It's about being able to adapt and analyze and really, think for yourself. Yeah.
Now, in terms of the curriculum itself, how does the IB kind of stack up against other approaches? We've talked a bit about, competency-based curriculums on the show before.
Right. Yeah, and they're quite different. The CBC, it's much more prescriptive, I would say. It's very much about achieving certain competencies, certain skills, whereas the IB, I think it's more about inquiry. It's about exploration. It's encouraging students to kind of delve deeper into subjects and to really, understand the why behind things.
So it's less about, okay, here's the information, memorize it.
Yeah.
And more about, okay, here's a problem. How would you approach solving this?
Exactly. Yeah. It's about giving students the tools and then letting them, kind of figure out the path, become independent learners, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with the whole holistic development piece, right?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like FISA is really emphasizing, not just academic excellence, but also things like emotional intelligence,
right?
Resilience, interpersonal skills. It's like they're trying to prepare these kids for life, not just for exams.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, those softer skills, as they're sometimes called, they're becoming increasingly important. I mean, you think about, collaboration, communication, empathy. These are things that, employers are looking for. These are things that are going to help you succeed in life, period.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you don't always see that, kind of woven into the curriculum. You know what I mean? It's often seen as like an extracurricular thing or,
Yeah, it's an add-on.
Yeah. But it sounds like FISA is really making that a core part of their approach. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Afrocentric Foundation, because I think that's what really sets FISA apart.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, it's the first Afrocentric IB school in the world.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So what does that actually, I think sometimes people hear the word Afrocentric and they might have different interpretations.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, it's about celebrating African history, culture, values, but it's not about excluding other perspectives. It's about, kind of grounding students in their own heritage, giving them a sense of identity, but then also allowing them to, engage with the world from that perspective,
So it's not about, shutting out the rest of the world. It's about viewing the world through this lens.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about understanding your own culture, and valuing it, but then also being able to, see how it connects to other cultures.
And I think that's so important, especially in today's, increasingly globalized world. Because, we talk about, global citizens. But I think it's important to remember that, global citizenship starts with, understanding who you are and where you come from.
Right. And I think it gives you a sense of, belonging, and a sense of pride in your own heritage. And then from there, you can go out and engage with the world with confidence,
Yeah, I love that. Now, beyond the academics and the cultural foundation, can you talk a little bit about the extracurricular activities at FISA? I mean, what kind of opportunities are there for students to kind of explore their passions outside of the classroom?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty vibrant environment. They've got everything from sports to robotics clubs, arts, music. I mean, it's really about, giving students that opportunity to, find what they're passionate about and develop those interests.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because, school's not just about, getting good grades, right? It's about, developing as a whole person.
Yeah.
And finding things that, light you up and make you excited to learn and to grow.
Exactly. And I think, those extracurriculars, they also help with, teamwork, leadership skills, time management.
Well, absolutely.
All those things.
And I think, we've all had those experiences where, maybe it wasn't even something that we, excelled at, but it was something that we really enjoyed doing. And I think there's so much value in that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, passion goes a long way.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something that I know is important to a lot of parents, and that's affordability. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of FISA?
Yeah, well, they really are committed to making this type of education accessible. Now, one thing the source material mentions is affordable, high-value education. And that almost sounds like a contradiction.
Right.
How do they manage to offer these amazing facilities programs while still keeping it accessible?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a question that's very close to FISA's core values.
Okay.
They really believe that every single child deserves access to this type of education.
Right.
What they've done is they've really worked hard to create this model that allows them to keep tuition fees reasonable.
Okay.
But still maintain,
right,
these high standards.
It's amazing that they've been able to do that.
It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
It really challenges this notion that,
right,
for excellent education, you have to pay a ton.
Exactly. It's like investing in the future, not just for these students, but for the community, for society as a whole.
Absolutely. And so as we kind of wrap things up here, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of ground. But, for parents who are listening who are really intrigued by FISA, what would you say are the, the key takeaways, the things to really kind of consider?
Well, I think, FISA offers this really unique blend, right? I mean, you've got the academic rigor, but you also have this, really strong emphasis on cultural identity, on holistic development. And then they're, creating this environment where students are encouraged to be, inquisitive, to be creative, to be problem solvers.
Yeah, and I think it's about more than just, preparing for university. It's about preparing for life.
Exactly.
And being, a well-rounded, engaged global citizen who's ready to, make a positive impact on the world.
Right.
So for all you parents out there who are, thinking about what's the best fit for your child, I think, FISA definitely deserves a closer look. Explore their website, reach out to them, ask questions, and really see if this might be the right environment to empower your child's future.
It's an exciting model. It really is. I'm curious to see, how this impacts education in the long term.
Yeah. And I think, it'll be interesting to see if other schools start to adopt similar approaches because it really feels like they're on to something special.